want to start on the topic of education.
Mhm.
You recently tweeted something very, very interesting, and I'll show the tweet on the screen. But you said, I just had like a 20-minute conversation with GPT about the history of modern physics. If I had this shit as a tutor during high school and college, OMG, I think we can basically reinvent the concept of education at scale. College, as we know it, will cease to exist. Okay, that's an interesting point. Obviously, got very popular on Twitter. What do you mean by reinvent education? You know, if college ceases to exist, you know, what are we replacing it with? What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, people really misunderstood this, and I guess this is the nature of Twitter: is to be misunderstood because you get 280 characters, knock yourself out, right? But um, but what I meant is that I'm a big advocate of education. I love teaching and I love learning, and I always have my entire life. A lot of things I did early on as a founder at Anaconda was I would go around teaching Python courses, and I would teach tutorials and workshops at the conferences and I love teaching. I love teaching kids. I love teaching adult learners. I just love teaching and I love learning. So for me, I don't, it is incorrect to interpret that statement as saying education is done. In fact, it's the exact opposite. That education should be so pervasive, should be so personalized, should be so cheap and accessible that everyone is able to learn the things they are interested in and pursue education and pursue their curiosity at any level, anytime, anywhere, any topic. You can sort of see it up here. That's my there.
Okay,
It's
I got it.
it's my diploma from Cornell University, right? And the vision of the founders of that university was where anyone it was to create a university where anyone could find education in whatever pursuit, whatever topic. And so for me, the intent of that is that number one, we can reinvent education at scale, literally what I said. And number two, I think college as we currently see it will cease to exist. And it may not happen overnight. It probably won't happen overnight, but I think it'll happen really fast. And if it doesn't, if that transformation hasn't basically already, if that transformation is not underway already by the end of the decade, then we've done something wrong. So I totally expect for us to be transforming the concept of secondary education, higher education, and postgraduate education, and whatnot, and continuing education, which is
Okay.
oftentimes an underrated topic. So what I mean is that right now, the institutions of education, well, they're institutions, and they were formed around a time when access to qualified teachers was the bottleneck. Just like in the early days of communications, bandwidth was the bottleneck. And then the internet instantly flipped that around in the space of about 10 or 15 years to where bandwidth was no longer the bottleneck and attention became then the scarce resource, right? So with education, I think it's a very similar thing. We're going to flip this around to where people will generally have access to a tremendous amount of amazing materials. We already have that. When you look at the quality of educational materials around math and science and history and so many other things on YouTube with amazing content creators, right? Math content from Khan Academy, from the three blue, one brown, three brown, one. I can never quite get it right. But then really great, wonderful content like Kurzgesagt and Veritasium, Mark Rober. I mean, you just name it. There's a history oversimplified. There's just a nonstop, amazing pile of great content out there that I would have loved to have. But that's a one-way broadcast kind of medium. And if you complement that with what we can see just in the, basically 8 to 12 months into LLMs,
Yes.
what we can see at scale that can afford for people, it's going to be game over, I think, in terms of actually this model of charging people something like $150,000 to go sit for 4 years to listen to some guy give a lecture he's tired of giving because he's given it for 20 years, and then have some TAs who are underpaid to go and check your homework. Like, this is not the right model anymore, clearly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My wife got her PhD a few years back, and the amount of money it costs, when in reality it doesn't need to cost that much when you look at the tools we have available today. It's just insane, right? So it's going to be that, I think that cost and barrier to entry is going to significantly come down, and that's obviously great for everybody. Do you think the the method and the way that the information is delivered right now is primarily through humans, human to human education. Do you think it will stay that way, or do you think tools like GPT will become the educators, and the humans will have less involvement in the delivery of the information, if that makes sense?
I think it'll be, I honestly imagine it'll be some kind of a hybrid thing.
Mm.
And I think what, for many of the things we want to learn, some of them are just personal explorations, in which case, having GPT be a glorified, like, like those little recorded audio tours when you go to a museum,
Yeah.
right? It's a glorified version of one of those, but you're touring not the museum, but basically the entire museum of all human knowledge and thought and history over the last several thousand years. So you have a personalized guide and tour through that. That's awesome, but that's often not the most effective way to learn new skills, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you actually want to go and, let's say, learn how to code, right? You can actually, I think I mean, professional coders today are starting to use LLMs in their daily work all the time. If not to help them code, to help them debug, to help them cobble together some deployment script, or figure out some other bit of YAML. Like, it's amazing it can do that, right? You may be a really great Ruby programmer. You might not be so strong at SQL, but with Copilot or with GPT, you got a SQL buddy, right? So I think assistive coding already is there for professionals. And for learners, though, to have these things help them in a peer learning environment or in a project-based sort of like group, it's amazing. And it wouldn't have to just be like either, like GPT and individuals or nothing. I think there's sort of this like, we'll very quickly get to a point where these technologies are helping groups learn how to build things together. And that's really the amazing thing, because it can serve as a much more fluid glue between different brains on a team. And that's actually, I think, the more powerful thing.
Yeah. I love the tour example. I think that could be very beneficial when AR, really starts to take off, and you're walking around and you're seeing, prompts coming up and information that's giving you information based on what you're looking at in real time, not just audio, but visual as well. I think the combination of the two will really have a huge impact.
Well, and it's the thing is I mean, just one thing to drop in there, which is it's not just about, I think we're so used to media and information being impersonal and depersonalized and generic, being spammed at us. But imagine if you go in and you already have a personal LLM, personal sort of assistant kind of thing that's got, deeply, highly privatized, personal to you, and your phone or your device does a quick connection with the museum LLM. Yeah. And it knows, for instance, I'm big into astronomy. All right. And I love astronomy. I love the history of science. I love these kinds of things. And if I'm going to an art gallery, if there's intersections with particular artists or particular paintings, or there's some scientist who this was the inspiration for them to do this thing, or let's say we're seeing some painting by Leonardo da Vinci and there's some connection to some math thing, I want to know that, right? And it can make a deeply more personalized tour for me. And the same thing as if someone is into music. I also happen to really be into music. So if there's a connection with music or musical history, like that's the kind of thing that you would really be able to get, right? And it's mind-boggling how much more meaning there is to be minted in the world if we have an assistant that can scan all of this and bring into focus for us the things that we are interested in and that we care about.
Hey, thanks for watching this YouTube video. If you want to see more like this, please remember to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.